We are live.
Hi, Sam.
Well, that's quite an introduction. Thank you, Rand.
The hormones are working.
Good evening, all, and welcome to the May 19th, 2021 meeting of the East Hampton Town Planning Board. Thank you to the Planning Department. Thank you to LTV, and of course, the Planning Board staff for all the extraordinary efforts that it takes to bring us to you live via Zoom. We have a number of matters on for tonight for site plan review, and we'll get right to it. The very first is South Essex Corner. Is the representative of South Essex Corner. I see Mr. Strong on the screen. This is yours, correct?
It is mine. I'm happy I'm on time tonight.
Okay, so are we. Welcome. Okay, Ed Krug, you're the board on this. Yep. Okay, and Marco, take it away.
Okay, just going to share screen here. This was going to be the site plan. The board has reviewed this once before in its initial evaluation. This is a follow-up memo of this application. So this is an application to construct the two-story, 2,000 square foot building. It has a first floor retail and a deck, second floor apartment with a porch, an unfinished basement, and it's going to be on a vacant parcel in downtown Montauk on South Essex Street. So following up for the follow-up review, so the site plan was revised to include some of the details the planning board had previously requested. That's detailed out in the memo, which that includes pavement details, spot elevations, specifications for the sidewalk colors. If you remember, there are wetlands across the street on the other side, so a portion of the property is within NRSP jurisdiction. There is a ZBA application which was filed, and that includes details for the parking in the right-of-way and construction of the building within the NRSP jurisdiction. So the subject site and the surrounding parcels in this area are kind of known to have issues in regarding proper drainage of the storm water runoff. The planning board had requested that the applicant provide additional drainage structures to mitigate the impacts of flooding. The applicant's revisions include an additional dry well to be in the town alleyway, and additional drainage structures, and a reconfigured layout of their proposed dry well. So you can kind of see here, there's 4 proposed at the moment, one on this corner. That's dry well, I think I don't know why it's not specified. It's not specified here, but it's 1, 2, 3, and I guess 4, and I guess there's 1 dry well in the town alleyway here. I'm going to switch to the other plan. Okay, it's a little weird. They don't match up exactly. That should probably be amended, but it says 1, 2, 3 on the sanitary plans, and the dry well 4 is on the town alleyway. So in terms of the slopes, the nature of the slopes, if you look at the purple lines, it's higher on the northeastern corner, and then the water flows down towards the southwest. So most of the water flowing down will be coming down from up that corner, which is an issue that we want to make sure is properly addressed when the site is if the site is developed. So the planning department had recommended the town's consultant engineer to review the site plan and the applicant's revisions to their drainage and sidewalk. The consulting engineer's comments are attached to the memo for the planning board's review. In regards to the drainage, the comments state that the overall grading design does not clearly indicate as to how stormwater runoff from the site would be captured and contained within the proposed drainage structures. As I mentioned before, this area is much higher up. Given where the dry well is located, number 4 is located, it's kind of in the middle. So any water that's not exactly captured by dry well number 4 would flow down into neighboring properties, which is a potential concern, which is a concern. There's also additional bullet points that I have listed out in the memo that are the additional drainage recommendations from the engineer. Planning board should review those notations, and the applicant should as well. This includes ensuring that the site plan and the sanitary plans are matching, and then also additional details such as how it's going to be properly contained and managed in terms of the stormwater, how it's going to be properly contained and managed. The planning department notes that it's unclear on the site plan and survey as to how the sidewalk is going to connect the main entrance to the stairway to the front, which is the south side of the building. I'm going to show you the area, well, I guess the artist's rendition, I guess. And so, so the renderings show that there's a paved concrete area. However, that's not reflected on the site plan. So you can kind of see if I zoom in what would be the front of the building, there's paved concrete area, which is how it connects all together. But that's just not noted on the site plan here, where you can kind of see it's just the raised front walkway, the staircase, and there's nothing here. You can see the lines here says 4-foot walkway, but there's not exactly something depicted there for connected to the front. So that should be illustrated on those plans. The planning board had recently reviewed a site plan for the neighboring property, which is Pete's Garden Center and Service Commercial. That would be located to the west of this subject parcel. And that's on 93 South Euclid Avenue. The location of the sidewalk for that property is proposed to be in the right-of-way. At the moment, the subject application is proposed to have it within their property lines. However, that other one, of course, is in the right-of-way, which is about over here. At the moment, so that being said, the sidewalks will not line up properly, and so the planning board should provide guidance on to where the sidewalk should be placed, whether it's going to be in the right-of-way or on the property. It's noted that a majority of the properties located in downtown Montauk appear to have sidewalks beyond their property line or no sidewalk at all. Given that this is going to be for public access, one way is to have it in the right-of-way. If it's not to be in the right-of-way, but yet it's on private property, an option could be an easement of some kind. That's also mentioned in the engineer's comments. So the East Hampton Hamlet report for Montauk, which was adopted by the town board, recommends that the sidewalks in Montauk be designed in a way that encourages and improves the walkability in downtown areas. A portion of which I've attached to the memo as well for the board to review if they wish to. Basically, the crosswalks and the street parking should be designed in a manner that prevents blind spots that would endanger pedestrians. Overall, in this general area, as the board will know, having reviewed applications, that this area has been having many commercial site plans with affordable apartments as part of them as well. And so there's definitely an increase in commercial activity, residential activity, just general activity in downtown Montauk, which generates additional vehicular traffic. In this area, I'm going to actually go to the aerial and GIS to kind of give a better view. Oops. So the site in question is this corner parcel here. So the planning board should keep in mind that this area will have pedestrians visiting the new commercial developments, which is, as we know, this a site plan for this parcel here, an approved site plan for this one here, which is Beckman, and this one has been recently built within the last 15 years or so. That's Kazura. There's a skate park that's located to the north. That is also an area in which people can visit, and people will come down to commercial centers down to the commercial centers from up there. So walking along this area would be there's going to be people around, and there's also traffic that comes along these two roads here. And so, with that being said, the planning board may wish to consider sending comments to the town board so that they should to consider the implementation of additional stop signs or crosswalks at the intersection of South Euclid and South Essex. At the moment, there are none. There are no stop signs. I think there is one stop sign here on this side, but it's quite. It could be improved. As we know, this area is higher up in elevation, and so when drivers are turning to the right, coming down from South Essex Street, they could be blinded by the sun glare that's coming from the west during the afternoons. So going down this way, that is a potential hazard for them. And as parking is proposed to be in the front in this area, that's something that should be considered. So moving on to ADA, Chief Fire Marshal Dave Brown has noted that the project is not ADA compliant. 60% of the entrances need to be accessible. At the moment, that's not the case. The entrances that are located along the northern side, or I guess the back of the building, those are serviced by raised stoops, and so they would not be accessible. There's one entrance to the rear here, and then one entrance to the rear here, where it says stoop and it says landing. And there's no way to get there if it's a raised stoop. So the slopes of the proposed sidewalk on the ramp appear to meet the appear to meet the slope requirements, which is 1 to 12 or maximum of 8.33%. I believe the walkway and the ramp meet those requirements. The planning department notes the site plan and survey with proposed improvements should be revised with additional details denoting curb cuts for the handicap spaces. That way we ensure that on the plan it's depicted there and that it should be there. So Chapter 255-11-45 requires that 13 off-street parking spaces for the project, which is 12 for the retail use and 1 for the affordable apartment. The project proposes 8 spaces in the rear and 5 in the street right away. The applicant should submit a sketch showing that the 5 spaces could be provided on the site. It appears that with a parking in the right-of-way variance and a sketch depicting parking spaces could fit on the property, the applicant meets the required number of parking spaces. The required number of spaces and proposed number of spaces should also be detailed on the site plan survey. As we mentioned before, the applicant is going to be responsible for the improvements to the back alleyway and ensuring proper access to that to those rear parking spaces. The applicant has submitted a revised landscaping plan, which I'm going to put up here. This is a revised landscaping plan that the applicant has submitted. Basically, some of the plantings were changed, and so some of them are now taller. All the plantings are considered to be native to East Hampton. A clearing line has been provided on the landscaping plan and survey, which was requested by the planning board during the initial review. The planning department notes that street trees are encouraged in downtown Montauk, and that the South Euclid Avenue does not have many at the moment. The recent development trend of the avenue has eliminated the existing street trees in order to provide space for parking and sidewalks for public access. It appears that a street tree could be planted at the corner of South Euclid Avenue and South Essex Street, 25 feet from the edge of pavement that would not interfere with sight distance. A sycamore maple is recommended as a street tree in the Montauk Central Business Study and should be considered. It is noted that the space along the avenue is limited, but could be increased if the sidewalks were to be located in the right of way. Basically, to that point about the development trend, you can see here on this street, there's street trees that are of mature age that have been planted a while back, and so they've been preserved as development has gone on. However, starting with Kazura and the approved Beckman site plan, there's some trees that are located in where parking spaces would be, and so these would either have been eliminated or pretty much have been eliminated. On the other side, there's no real any kind of similar street trees like the ones on the southern side. But that's just something to note of that's been happening along this street. So comments were received from the ARB stating that the ARB had reviewed the application and will conduct further review once the application receives approval from the planning board. Site plan review, the following should be submitted and what is required for approval, which is revisions to the drainage/sanitary plan, revisions to sidewalk entrance/exit design, including ADA accessibility, revisions to the site plan survey, which is parking calculations, coverage calculations, a sketch depicting parking can be placed on site, NRSP for construction near freshwater wetlands, variance from the wetland setback for the proposed septic system, and parking in the right-of-way variance. The planning board has provided comments to the zoning board in general support of an NRSP and parking in the right-of-way for the project during the application's initial review. So in conclusion, the proposal will require review and revisions to the plan's drainage, sidewalk, parking, and ADA. The planning board should ensure that the site's design is in keeping with the community character of the downtown Montauk area and contribute to the area's long-term development as adopted by the town in the Montauk Hamlet study.
Great, thank you, Marco. It's always a very thorough report. And
Okay, Sam, I just want to make a disclaimer here that the applicant's representative is my son-in-law, and I feel I can be fair and impartial on this application.
very good, thank you very much. Speaking of whom, we will now turn it over to Mr. Strong. You're on. Andrew?
Sorry, I just was muted there. Yeah, I think we can keep it pretty brief because I think we can work with all of the recommendations made by the planner. There's no problem to, just taking them in order. We've put the drainage plan back to our engineer on the basis of getting the consulting engineer's comments. We've sent the plan to our architect, who is confident that he can rearrange it to ensure that the ADA accessibility extends to the back entrances to cover that 60%. It's no problem to put to show the access on the plan. It should be no problem to show parking on the site. There's enough space there. And we're happy to move the sidewalk. The only comment I have, and it's a small one, is with respect to the drainage and the sidewalk, my memory is that we were recommended to put the sidewalk onto our property, in part so we didn't push that parking out on Euclid Avenue. And we're really in your hands in terms of where the parking, the sidewalk goes. But what I want to avoid is sort of playing whack-a-mole where we're changing it because the changes, are small in some, but they do, as a drum that I've beat before, the costs do add up as we take it back to a surveyor and an engineer, remap everything to make that change. And on that same note, just the idea of an easement is one that I'd really like to avoid because it's just another layer of encumbrance on the property, and it's another layer of cost and time to the applicant. We can work this out. That's why we're here. We're trying to show that we can work with the town. We'll incorporate any suggestions, but if we can just get it set, my objective then is to get through the zoning board and have a, pretty close to a final site plan, essentially by adopting the proposals, and just gently reminding that, like, if the firmer those proposals can be, the better. And I understand that things change, but just to make that point. and it's similar with the drainage and the fact, we tried to really listen to the planning department's suggestions on the drainage. We took it to our engineer, we've put it in. And I know that we're sort of in uncharted territory in that we don't have an in-house engineer at the moment that could have given us that feedback at a sooner point, but we'll adopt the drainage recommendations of the consulting engineer and make those changes. But with that caveat, I think, all of the proposals from the town planner are things that we're happy to amend and address.
Glad to hear.
Sam?
Okay.
Sam, could I just say?
Yes, Joanne, go right ahead, please.
Yeah, the the consulting engineer did review the location of the sidewalk and found that there was room, and he felt that there was room to put it in the right of way and recommended that you do so. So I don't think that's really a question. He evaluated the safety and the site distance and found it acceptable to have it in the right of way. Just, I want to play that into your discussion. Make sure you're aware of that.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, Ed, I think this is, yes.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Andrew, for those clarifications. Thanks, Marco, for a very thorough memo. I'm happy that you guys are really, you seem willing to kind of address all the things that Marco brought up, creating, coming into compliance with ADA, the drainage situation. I actually, on the plan that I actually have 5 dry wells, right? There are 4 on site, and then the 5th one is the one in the alleyway.
Yeah, I think, I don't think it matched. I think maybe, so the site plan here that's, I guess, the survey as well. This one has 5 depicted, I think.
Yeah, right. That does, yeah.
But the sanitary one has 4.
Okay. So, some work may have been done already on getting us to a place where, we can be more assured that all the runoff can be captured on site. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly how that gets accomplished, but obviously it's important and it's something for the consulting engineer and your engineer to work with to get to that. The consulting engineer does actually say in his notes that you need to, quote, demonstrate that the runoff water would be properly contained and managed. I'm not quite sure how you demonstrate that, but I'm sure that between the engineer and Marco, you all can figure out how that's done. But that's obviously really important. Is that 6-inch curb that's along the south side an element of that effort to contain the drainage? I noticed that there's a 6-inch curb all along the south side of the property, next to that walkway.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it is. I'd have to ask the engineer if it was specifically put there for to try to capture the drainage and prevent the runoff. But it's certainly something I can track down.
Okay.
Isn't that the west side of the property?
The west side.
Yeah. So this is like the lower side. I think I kind of agree. It's probably the most likely case that's also included there for that reason, because that wasn't there during the initial evaluation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So all that will certainly get worked out. And thank you for being willing to spend some time and energy on that. The sidewalk in the right of way really does make sense to me, for sure. It seems consistent with what else is going on along Euclid. Very much appreciate the fact that the sanitary system is located really as far away as it can be from the wetlands. So that's great. Understand you still need a variance for that, but I appreciate how you've located it. So I guess the only other concern that really, Marco did touch upon this, is that there is this concern that, yes, traffic coming down South Essex Street heading south and making the turn onto South Euclid, it's a tricky corner, right? I mean, it's a curve. People come around it kind of quickly. There are cars that could be backing up that are out of sight, out of the spaces that are in the right of way. it does seem like a situation that could really cause a little bit of havoc there. And I do think that the notion of at least having a crosswalk there would be helpful. I think if we can recommend that to the town board, it would probably be a good thing to do, right? I'm not sure if it's stop signs on Essex Street would really be practical, but, if there were sort of, a crosswalk and some kind of warning signs or whatever, it would probably be helpful, because with the change in grade and the sort of and the way that the street curves, it's very easy to kind of whip around that corner and not really see a car backing out onto Euclid until it's too late.
Mhm.
So I think that is something we really should consider, is making that recommendation to the town board.
Where would you put that in?
Well, I think, along, sort of at the T, right, where Marco's putting the cursor, right there. Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right.
So that's it. Those are really my comments.
Okay, very good. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for the applicant or for Marco?
It's Randy. I'm not sure I see how the sidewalk can be relocated. If you go to the survey for a second, you see how the edge of pavement is right against the back of those spaces, and it seems like if you push a 4-foot sidewalk in there, those spaces are going to go 4 feet onto the pavement. So, Joanne, I'm not clear how
That's
engineer-
that's consistent with what was done across the street. The paving is, I forgot we measured it. The paving will still be wide enough for 2 lanes, even pushing the sidewalk further into the right of way.
I think it just makes it, Randy,
the
the pavement, the street, I think they met the engineer, I think it's in the engineer's report. If they were to push out the parking spaces, the street would have 12 feet in each lane going west and east, 12 feet each. And I think that's the bare minimum.
It's standard. It's
Is it?
standard language.
Yeah, it does seem tricky there with people backing out. They're basically backing out into the right of way, into the lane of traffic to, to get,
Do it.
uh,
How else? I mean,
yeah.
it's pretty constrained over there. I don't know.
What about turning that, what would it take to convert South Euclid Avenue from South Essex to, I think it's South Edison? What would it take to make that a one-way street? Is that a big deal?
Joanne?
The town, it would be a town board decision.
Because that's, when you put these parking spaces here, and then you add the parking spaces across the street, directly across the street in that lot that's already been approved. Yeah, look how narrow that street is.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody that's said about the turn from South Essex onto South Euclid, that is going to be a major problem. It's going to be really, really tight.
How would a one-way, you think a one-way would remedy that?
Well, you'll have, instead of having 12 feet for each direction, you'll have 24 feet in one way.
Which way would you have it go? Because, I mean, if
It doesn't matter,
well,
whichever way is.
Well,
Well,
You
it seems like it should go eastbound if it's going to make the least,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
the least
exactly.
impact on the foot traffic and all the rest. That way traffic could circle around north and south to go back. But I mean, I think that's a good suggestion, along with any other traffic controls that we would recommend to the town board. But that's not something the applicant has any.
No. No,
No.
it doesn't.
influence over.
And I have a little issue with that only because it's just going to throw more cars onto Main Street as they try to get around that spot. And, you know, I just know in the summer, Main Street, so many people are coming in and out of, you know, I've navigated this area living in Montauk, and I just can't, you know, the whole point is trying to avoid Main Street in the summer.
Well, maybe we could suggest that you know, I mean, because I think it's a practical matter. The, you know, the way the parking spaces have been placed on the site plan are compatible with the neighboring businesses and certainly with other approvals. But if we have other concerns about traffic, then I think we should ask the town board to look at it. Because I
Right.
don't think that's something that we can do through this application. I mean, this application is obviously pointing out some of the complications there, but I don't know that, I would want a traffic engineer to look at it and make a recommendation and not for us to opine. I mean, we could
Right.
say, what about a one-way street? What about a stop sign? I would be more inclined to put a stop sign south on, you know,
Essex?
yeah, just to, you know, with Marco pointing out where the
There is a
skate park
stop-
is in reference to this place, but
You know, the problem is,
Can
as Sharon
Can I
points out,
add just one point?
you go ahead.
For what it's worth, we have taken this to the highway department, and they don't have a problem. And you know, it may be that it's worth you know, putting it to them. It probably should come from the planning board, but you know, putting these questions to the highway department before
That's a
going to
great
town board.
idea.
And
Yeah, no,
you know how they, you know, again, we can work with it, but the more clarity we can get sooner in terms of where that sidewalk goes, the better.
right.
you gotta take the site and the traffic and the directions of traffic as you find them. So, you know, it's for us to do. I mean, I'm just concerned that, you know, with the unintended consequences, which I guess what Sharon's pointing out is, you know, we try and resolve one thing here or minimize one situation over here, and we end up exacerbating a traffic situation elsewhere, not too far, really.
I think the stop sign wouldn't be a bad idea, but you know, again, it's for somebody else to make that decision, just because it would just slow everybody down there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we just ask the highway department to comment and see if they have any suggestions.
I think that's a good idea, Kathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't think it works very well the way it is with this. People, are you saying that there's the same setup on the other side of the street right now? Have we approved back out parking into the road? Marco, do you
Yeah.
know?
They have head-in parking as well on this side.
Yeah, and the neighboring lot to the west has head-in parking.
Okay,
It's
but let's-
pretty much the
let's-
pattern there.
why don't we do this? Thomas, we can work a letter out to go to the highway department, can't we?
Well, I don't know if the highway department is
Well,
It's
that's-
really-
You're right, it's the town board.
it's the town, well, it's
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
the consulting engineer is I think we've got maybe a traffic parking collision here in terms of them not really functioning well together here.
Well, it's something that we need to look into, but I don't want to hold up the application, you know, while we're doing that, so. And does anyone else have any, Thomas, just to answer my question, we can send a letter correctly. My question is to the town board and ask them to look into this, correct?
Sam, I'm just going
Go
back,
ahead.
Chairman, I'm going back and reading the engineer's memo, and he says that in order to evaluate whether the proposed sidewalk can be located within the right of way and in turn shift the parking stalls further south, the limits of the entire roadway pavement, including the center line pavement marking, need to be shown on the plan. At the minimum, the overall width of the roadway pavement along South Euclid Avenue should be 24 feet, with the widths to the vehicle travel lanes in both directions being 12. So he's suggesting that he needs more information actually before making a final decision on that.
Can I just ask, is the reason for keeping it in the right of way for liability issues for the owner of the property? Is that just to,
No,
It gives you more room on site for buildings, et cetera.
Yeah,
And it's
Oh,
been
for-
a development pattern in Montauk for a long time. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that doesn't make it good.
No, I know, but I think, Joanne, maybe you could speak to that.
Well, no, actually, I'd like to hear what Andrew, because I think that sounded from Sharon like it was a question for Andrew.
well, it's a question like, so we did that to create more room, right, for on the road. That's why we were making the suggestion, but
Mhm.
it makes sense that you might want to keep it off personal property, I guess,
Mhm.
maybe.
Well, look, the applicant, I haven't spoken yet, so if you don't mind,
Go
Sam,
ahead.
I
No.
don't think it makes sense based on what everybody's saying that we would want to push the parking spaces back, into the road. It seems like if there's any way to have the sidewalk on their property, I mean, we're talking about a one-way street, a stop sign, even if the room shows 12 feet on each side of the road, I don't know why we would want to push it out of the property if the applicant themselves is saying they don't mind using their own space. They're not the one trying to maximize this here. So, and I don't think that we can wait for, a decision on that stop sign because we do have this application before us.
I
So
agree.
I would be in favor of the application as proposed. The engineer was questioning the space there. And if it's that tight and we're all concerned, it seems like we should pursue that further, if you ask me. And I think that we should work out a mechanism to make sure that sidewalk is usable. Because I understand that concern that it's not only on private property and available to that owner. But otherwise, I would support this plan. I think it's consistent. To me, it's a drainage issue at this point.
Mhm.
Well,
I tend to agree with Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ian also. How does everyone else feel?
yeah, I think, I'm glad Joanne pointed that out. I misremembered what the engineer had said. He didn't make a declarative statement. He questioned whether or not there's going to be enough room if you put the sidewalk in the right of way.
Oh.
So he said that needs to be determined.
Yeah.
So it's not as though he determined that there's going to be enough space in the roadway. He asked that the applicant, or that we need to determine whether or not when you push the sidewalk into the right of way, whether that will leave you enough room, which is that 12 feet in both directions.
Right, and beyond that, Lou, we're all familiar with the area and we're all concerned. So even if it showed technically that it fit, I'm not sure why we would want to give the landowner more room to build on their own property if they're willing to put the sidewalk there, and we come up with a mechanism that allows for that sidewalk to be used by the public. I don't know why we would pursue it even if it technically fit.
Yeah, you're right. And so, but in order for us to make that decision, we need to know what the ultimate outcome will be, what the ultimate plan will be. Is it worth pushing that sidewalk into the right of way?
Well, I'm saying in what scenario would it be? If the engineer determined that there is technically enough room, would that comfort you? I mean, for me,
it doesn't. Like I said, I think it doesn't comfort me.
Yeah, well, so it seems like that's would be onerous if we make them show that it'll work, and none of us are gonna want to see that plan.
I see.
We all want to see the
So you're
sidewalk.
saying to
I mean,
make
they've already offered to put the sidewalk on the property, and that was
That's
our
what I'm saying,
initial
yeah.
suggestion to them, so they could, so the variance application for the parking wouldn't be such a big, percentage of variation. They've offered to do that, but we just have to tell them what we want.
I think we're saying that's what
I
we
think
want.
as proposed makes sense, and I think it's a good idea to suggest a stop sign there to slow people down, but I don't think the application depends on that.
No.
Right.
Ian, I think you did a good job summarizing it, that we really seem to have a consensus to put the sidewalk on their property. But also, if you can imagine for a second, somebody backs out of this applicant, right? some people are going to be going east. Some people are going to want to go west. So if I'm trying to back out and then I want to go east, and there's cars going by on the east and I can't get into the lane, I think we should go further and look at that, at Lou's one-way street idea. I mean, I think there's potential for a real clogging here of people backing up, going different directions. I don't think we're doing anybody a favor.
No, you'd certainly have a more definitive traffic flow if you did it that way. People would only be able to come into the parking spaces one way, pull into the parking spaces one way, and pull out as if continuing.
Exactly.
Let's just wrap up the questions.
Can I make one more comment about the sidewalks? Because as you know, we have a site plan review for this parcel next door, and they currently have their sidewalks proposed not in the right of way, lining up with this parcel here, which so these both parcels here have sidewalks proposed to be in the right of way. One is already currently existing. The second half of this block does not have any really defined sidewalks at all. And there's a steep change in elevation between these two. There's actually a small little concrete wall here that kind of juts and kind of ruins any kind of flow for a sidewalk. So realistically, there's only going to be sidewalks that would line up on this eastern portion of the block. And so I just want the board to keep in mind that if the sidewalk's proposed to be on the property here, it's not going to line up with this one here unless this one also proposes to be inside the property lines, and they won't line up with the store at all unless they do another little jut out as well.
Yeah. Well, we might have to do a jut out.
Mm-hmm.
Make it work.
And I think we talked about that before in this application and the one across the street.
Yeah, we
Similar.
definitely did.
Yeah, the sidewalks in this area are pretty much of a mess. They're very inconsistent. And that one, which is that art gallery, that was such a nightmare. You know, that got built in spite of recommendations by this board. So,
And
Let's move on because we've been on this one for quite a while. Should the applicant address the revisions made to be made and recommendations to the drainage sanitary plan from the consulting engineer provided to the board's agreement to the comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, all around. Thanks. I think most of these are going to be yeses all around. Should the applicant address the revisions to be made and recommendations to the sidewalk design from the town's consulting engineer? Yes, all around?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, hey, hang on. What are those? Wait a second. I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to go back and provide more information. So that's what I understand the recommendation to be. What I want to understand. So can we? I just want to be clear about what the board is telling me to do with this.
Yeah, I don't think we want to see that. I mean, what they're asking to do is us explore the possibility of moving the sidewalk south. And I don't think any of us support that.
No.
I do think we should make sure, I think Marco brings up a good point, that the sidewalks have to meet up. But I don't think we want to move the whole sidewalk south, so.
So what's the point in exploring it, right?
That's what I'm saying. I think the answer to the question is no.
I agree.
But they can come back with a plan that where it juts out and makes a connection. The point is that the sidewalks will connect in some fashion, and they can design it, even if it's on their property, they can design it in such a fashion that it will connect with a sidewalk next door.
I agree with that 100%. I think that the engineer of the question, I took it to refer to measuring the road and the center line.
We will reword the question to reflect that that the applicant should, with respect to the sidewalk, is coordinate the right word, but make sure that there's a flow there.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, should the planning board send comments to the town board to consider the implementation of additional stop signs and crosswalks at the intersection of South Euclid and South Essex?
Can we amend that to say, and the possibility of a one-way street?
You read my
east.
mind. Yeah, I would agree with that. Everyone else?
Yes.
Yes.
All around. All right, should the applicant address the chief fire marshal's comments regarding ADA accessibility?
Yes.
And I presume that'll be yes. And should the applicant consider additional street trees along South Euclid Avenue?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, they've agreed to do all of it.
No one says. All right, very well. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, guys. Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one, which is the Nick Cohen Artist Studio. Eric is the committee, the planning department, I'm sorry. Randy, you're the board, and I'm looking for Mark Cata, I see. And
And Nick Cohen is here as well.
Nick Cohen is there as well. And there's Mr. Catalano. Good morning. We're getting feedback from somewhere.
I took care of it, Sam. Sorry, go ahead.
Very much. Quite all right. Okay. All right. So this is an artist studio. Another artist studio. I want to talk about artist studios just for a moment before. Well, I don't think we've had, as folks who've been following this know, that for a while ago the town board determined that the planning board should be looking at these artist studios, and it raises lots of issues that are ones that we might not want to have to be part of, such as is the applicant an artist. But leaving that aside, I think that we as a board should be aware that while we sometimes do get an application in a residential district, a residential parcel, because of some quirk in the law, quirk in zoning. For the most part, what we do involves commercial uses, and but that's not the case with these artist studios. They're almost uniformly in residential districts, and I just want us to all bear in mind that the concerns that we ordinarily have with respect to applications for commercial uses, there are factors that are not present in the, or that are different factors, I should say, that are present in a artist studio, namely things involving the fact that it's in a residential district, and you might want to have pay a little more deference to impacts on residential neighbors. So with that in mind, that we can now move on to this application. It's just something that's been weighing on my mind in the last few applications that we've had. So we have to look at it, I think, through a somewhat different lens. Okay, Nick Cohen and Eric, it's yours. So.
Sure. This is a site plan application to allow for clearing of a residential lot to remain, ultimately in order to accommodate an artist studio. The subject parcel is Zone B residence and is located in Springs, and this is a type 2 action under SECRA. The subject parcel was recently cleared, as you can see in the aerial. It was previously 100% uncleared. Currently, it's at, based on the as-built survey that was submitted, it's at an extent of 62% cleared, whereas 65% is the maximum that would be allowed if a single-family residence were constructed. Presumably, this was done in anticipation of the artist studio being approved. That is a separate but related application that the board is reviewing for an artist studio of 1,040 square feet. So, as Sam was alluding to, this is kind of a unique situation. Site plan approval is required for the clearing of a residential lot that is not done in association with constructing a single-family residence. So that is why this is before you. It's not a special permit application, so you don't have any specific standards. However, the application does still have to meet your general site plan standards. Among those are physical compatibility and protection of residential areas. I have this in the memorandum, quoted from the code, but just briefly, your standard regarding physical compatibility. The rural open space environment of the town shall be fostered by preserving, wherever possible, large trees, scenic vistas, and other natural features of the site, extensive clearing and grading shall be avoided. Screening with trees or other plantings may be required for parking or other disturbed areas which are created. Where necessary or appropriate, a landscaping plan demonstrating that suitable vegetation will be planted and nurtured may be required by the board. And then regarding protection of residential areas, when a site is located adjacent to residences or a residence district, appropriate buffer, landscaping, natural screening, and fencing are to be provided in order to protect neighborhood tranquility, community character, and property values. So I attached all of the general site plan standards, but I feel that those two are particularly pertinent to this application. As I mentioned, the majority of the interior of the lot has been cleared, which is clearly visible from the corner of Lafayette Place that you can see on the aerial there. The applicants are now proposing to revegetate a portion of the property along Lafayette Place to provide screening so that the public can't see from that town roadway into the interior of the property. They intend to do this through the combination of a 25-foot wide revegetated buffer, which I will zoom in on this a little bit so that you can see that clearer. This dashed area here is to be the 25-foot wide area of revegetation. By doing that, the applicants would bring...
Frozen?
I'm sorry?
I thought you were frozen there for a second.
Oh, hopefully not. So by doing that, the property would be brought to 55% cleared, whereas again, 65% would be the otherwise allowable amount, provided a single-family residence was constructed. Additionally, along with that, they're proposing a 4-foot tall stockade fence to be in the interior boundary of that 25-foot wide strip. That would be situated roughly 60 feet from the actual edge of pavement on Lafayette Place. The idea being to screen the interior of the lot from that public roadway again. So really there's two things I think that you should consider here. One is whether or not the 4-foot stockade fence is appropriate. The board may want a taller fence, a 6-foot stockade fence, or not stockade fencing at all. Stockade fencing is, probably generally considered less rural in its aesthetic than, say, split rail fencing. However, it would provide the greatest amount of screening into the interior of the property. And then the other is just that, as you can see on this submitted site plan, it just says, quote, area of proposed revegetation planted on a mixture of 5 feet and 10 feet centers. I outlined what we would recommend be the revegetation in this area. We'd also recommend that a separate revegetation plan be submitted. That plan doesn't have to be terribly complicated. Basically, we would recommend a mixture of oaks and pitch pines as a canopy, along with huckleberry and lowbush blueberry as an understory, with the standard spacing distances given in the memorandum. But
Eric, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
I lost you about 2 minutes ago.
Can anyone else hear me?
Yeah, Eric, I can hear you fine. Randy, it might be yours. Can everyone else hear him?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. So those are basically the two main issues. To reiterate, and hopefully Randy can hear me by now, is basically the deciding on the fencing that's proposed, deciding on the revegetation, whether or not that area alone is adequate to meet your site plan standards. And regarding the protection of residential areas, you may also want to discuss revegetation and screening in other areas of the property. This plan basically alleviates the impact of seeing into the interior of the lot from Lafayette Place. However, as you can see in the aerial and this site plan, there are numerous residences neighboring this property. It's surrounded by developed residential property. Also, this does qualify as a minor site plan, which means you could waive the public hearing requirement. Again, this is a separate application, but is linked to the artist studio application. The artist studio application will require a public hearing. So you may want to consider waiving the hearing for the site plan application to prevent just the redundancy of holding two hearings for what is essentially the same project. But basically, those are the issues. The board should discuss whether or not this proposed revegetation is adequate to alleviate the potential negative impacts on the neighboring residences and determine whether or not you want to hold a public hearing.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. Mr. Catalano, would you like to respond?
Hi, Chairman, and hi, Board.
Hello?
I guess I'd like to just hear what the board has to say about this plan, and I mean, it does seem to be the only reason this has been triggered as a site plan is the revegetation question. So I'm hoping that that's what this site plan is limited to, essentially. So I've got some concerns about that, but I want to just see how you feel about that aspect of it, and if there's any other issues before we can weigh in on other stuff.
Very good. In that case, I'll turn it over to Randy.
Okay. Well, this is a lot clearer. It's great to see the survey and the layout, and the re-veg ideas. So here's what I have on my list. I don't know that we completely resolved this. The issue of there's no principal building on this lot, and normally you can't build an accessory structure, which I think this would be classified as an accessory structure. Normally you can't build an accessory structure on a vacant lot without a principal building unless you get a variance.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead, Eric.
By way of clarification, I can actually call up on the screen for you the code section if you want.
Okay.
But there's actually, I believe it's 3 conditions in which you are allowed to do it without a variance.
Okay.
One is if the adjoining property is owned by the same owner, in this case, and without getting into the other ones, I guess that's the case here. If Mr. Cohen were to sell either lot at any time, he would then have to demolish the structure or get or build a single family residence on this property with the artist studio. But he is allowed to have an adjoining vacant parcel with only an accessory building if he owns an adjoining abutting parcel.
And do we need a covenant? I mean, I think I do remember we talked about this. I worked on one in North Haven where they let a guy build a tennis court on a lot next door that he owned, but he had to file a covenant that says basically what you said, Eric, that if it's ever sold to a different party, basically reiterating what you just said.
I mean, it is in the town code already.
So let's say this vacant lot gets sold. There's a CO on the artist studio, and the vacant lot gets sold. How will the title company and the attorney representing the buyer know?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Randy, there's an artist studio declaration form that we have so Nick's already, I'm pretty sure already seen the artist studio, and it has all of that. Like if the property sold to a non-artist, it has to be demolished. If it can't have a kitchen or it can't have a bathroom, all of that. So
what about if it's sold to a non-adjoining property?
Well, so basically we took on other artist studio, on the other one that we have for resolution, I actually took the form declaration that we had and added any other conditions that the board decided on for that application. So if the board decided on a couple other conditions for this application, because it is unique, because it's an adjacent lot, those could be added to the artist studio declaration that the applicant will sign and file with the county clerk after the application is approved. So I don't think, as far as, ownership and transfer of ownership, that's a problem for this, because one, the code allows an accessory structure on an adjacent lot, and we have a declaration that has to get filed with the county clerk whenever one of these is approved.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion, Thomas, that we add, because it's unique, we add part of the declaration that if the property is sold not only to a non-artist, but to even an artist who doesn't live next door, that because right, otherwise we set up, let's say that he wants to sell the artist studio to a bona fide artist who doesn't live
Right.
anywhere nearby.
No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I would point out, I mean, what Thomas said, the covenants and restrictions basically supersede everything, but you actually have multiple levels of protection here. First of all, if this were a tennis court, like I was saying, an accessory structure, if he sold this property if there's any other kind of accessory structure, they sold the property to another person, they would either have to, under the code, demolish that structure or obtain or build a single family residence within a certain amount of time. What supersedes that is the covenants and restrictions for the artist studio, which also sort of govern that situation. But then furthermore, and this is in the covenants and restrictions and also in the town code, if Nick Cohen as an artist sells this to any other artist, they need to come back before this board to get approval as an artist. They don't get to, it's not like this gets CO'd as an artist studio and gets to be used by anyone in perpetuity. That artist is required to come before you and get a permit to use the artist studio as an artist studio once this current owner sells it.
It sounds like we can work it out. So another question is, I know there's a sink permitted in the studio, but where is the source of the water for the sink is question number one.
Not to interrupt, but I think this is we're not even quite at the artist studio application.
Yeah, I know.
I was about to say the same. Yeah.
I mean, Randy, I think that your points are all good, and especially the one you're about to get into, but and worth mentioning the other stuff so the applicant knows, but I think the artist studio details should probably wait unless it's directly relevant to the clearing.
Or what? Oh, we don't want to talk about the site plan?
It's a site plan application. The other application will have to be addressed and, but it seems like we're prematurely.
Yeah, we should be dealing with the clearing issues here more than anything else.
Okay, but I mean, if they have to revise their survey, it's cheaper to know all the revisions and not have to go back to the surveyor multiple times. That's why I was gonna.
Well, for sure, they put themselves in a little bit of a tough spot by clearing early and needing to come have this application at all. But here we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to limit it to the clearing and the re-veg.
Let's deal with those issues because that's really what this particular part of the application is about.
So I would say, Eric, when you said that the proposal is to do a 25-foot vegetated buffer, is that around the entire lot?
No, as you can see, hopefully you can still see the survey. It's just this hash marked area along Lafayette Place. That's the current proposal.
Yeah. So I would think, especially on the sort of northwest side there where the clearing goes all the way to the property line behind the studio, and there's 18 feet between there and the neighbor. I mean, I don't see why, given the size of this lot, why I guess Nick wants to leave room for a residence if he ever wants to build one there. What's the accessory structure setback on that lot? Is it?
Yeah, I can tell you in 2 seconds. Just let me.
Okay.
It is 15 feet side and rear.
Okay, so it meets the accessory structure setback.
Oh, I'm sorry. Accessory structure is 10. 10. Principal. I thought you were talking about building a residence. So 10 for accessory, 15 for the residence.
Okay, so it meets that, but I would say it seems to me that we would want especially along those residential lots. And again, I'm looking forward, but we did talk about noise factors on this application. So the inclination I would have is to try to move the studio a little bit off well, if you want to leave it there, fine, but I think there should be vegetation between the back of the studio and those residential parcels on the northwest.
Would you feel the same way if it wasn't as cleared?
No, I mean, if all the natural veg was up, it'd be better.
Mm-hmm.
But we want both visual and noise attenuation there, I think.
May I say something, or is that okay? Okay, everybody. So
yeah, go ahead.
Behind, I guess, the northwest property has about half an acre uncleared. So where I can't really face it, but the larger property with the 2 acres is fully uncleared for a large majority of that back part of that parcel. And I have full intentions. I did in the first place. Like the whole clearing thing was a complete disaster. Totally apologize. I have full intentions to plant trees along for visibility and sound, and also just to keep the neighborhood good. It wasn't necessarily going to be oaks and blueberries. It was probably going to be more white pine, arborvitae, stuff that grows a little bit faster and gives more screening. So I'm also open to whatever you guys suggest, but just so you guys know that that's in our scope of sight. I don't know if that's relevant or not. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so the revegetation plan could show. I was thinking, I saw we were talking pitch pine, but I think the pitch pine are the ones that get those beetles. So.
And we don't really have too much pitch pine here. It's more white pine, but I'm not addressing, I would like to be able to address not only, I do want to revitalize our natural habitat, but what I took out, and I would like to use the indigenous trees, but I would also like to use other landscaping that creates more sound, more visibility, more things that could actually, I think, do better for the area than necessarily underbrush and in a different way.
I think we're on the same page, just around, especially around the studio building.
Sure. I just didn't want to put it on that site vegetation because I know it doesn't fit the vegetation regulations of having indigenous trees such as blueberry, pitch pine, etc. So I didn't put that in there. It's in our intention to do it, but I didn't put it in there.
You know, again, eventually we're going to get before, we're going to have the application of the artist studio. And if we move that, that's going to affect all of these things. So, if we're okay with the revegetation up front and the fence, it seems like all this other stuff will have to get worked out.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the other issues are dependent on the other application, including the public hearing. So, Randy, do we have anything else that you want to cover on this? Because I want to, open it up to the other members of the board.
I guess I'm not completely clear what we're doing here is we're trying to just resolve the over clearing.
They cleared when they weren't supposed to, and if you clear without a building permit, then you have to get a site plan. And so,
but we're not doing a site plan.
It is.
Well,
the site plan just for the clearing and the re-veg.
Well, no, but that's not what this is a site plan for. It's a site plan. It's a site plan for an artist studio.
Not this application.
No.
Well, a site plan for clearing and re-veg without the artist studio is sort of meaningless.
It is, but that's what the code says they have to do because they cleared.
And there are certain things that they're doing. They're revegetating. They put in a fence, which members may or may not find objectionable. It's a stockade fence, and speaking for myself, I'm not a big fan of those. There are a limited number of issues that we can discuss in the context of this site plan. Granted, most of the issues are going to involve the other application for the artist studio. So,
well, I don't think these are really two applications. Are these being treated as a separate site
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a separate site plan.
Because the artist studio application comes in with its whole own set of criteria and its whole own things that we have to look at. That's,
Well, all right,
know.
let me just give me 3 minutes. I'll get the issues with both the clearing and re-veg and also with the artist studio, because I think it's the most efficient way to do it. It saves the applicant time.
but no, Randy, we're gonna do the limited, this, I don't want to call it limited. We're gonna do the site plan on the issue that's before us. Now, I'm gonna open it up to the rest of the board. If you want to just, chew it over and see if you got anything else that you want to mention, we can do that. But we really got to,
All right, well.
It isn't a monstrously large application. This one is.
Well, I think that treating them as two applications to me doesn't make any sense, but
that's what that's
I got it.
That's
So
where they came in.
the other thing I think we're going to need to see is, where does the water for the sink come from? Where does the wastewater from the sink go to? When we get the artist studio application in, and that's basically it. And then there's that whole parking thing. I guess we need 2 spaces. So I'm done.
All right, excellent. Anybody else have anything on this? Any other members?
I mean, for me, just for an opinion, I don't love stockade fence, so I'm good with no stockade fence. If they, do a nice buffer there and a nice revegetation, I don't think it's necessary.
I'd like to weigh in too.
Go ahead, and then I'll
Okay.
run other questions because we can cover that.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
I understand. I agree with Randy that this is very out of character, that the normal criteria for site plan here are not present because we're looking at an accessory building. We would have the septic depicted on this, and because there's no that makes it difficult. The parking isn't really depicted. Access to the lot and so on. I would recommend a split rail fence. I don't think a stockade fence is in keeping with the rural character, which is what Eric mentioned. And I think that a revegetation plan should be provided. I think that I went there and looked at it, and it's such a shame. There's big old oak trees are just all felled now. And I would think that the surrounding residences that once had this, forested area to look out to, I would ask that more be done to protect the residences that had once had that vista, to replace that, because it was, and I know Nick didn't do it on purpose, but, we got to fix the mistake now. So, and then I just had a question for Thomas. If we waive the public hearing on this, how do we, I get the practicality of having one public hearing, but do we notice both the site plan and the artist studio? It seems like we're treating them as 2 different issues, but we want to have one hearing on both issues. And I don't know how that's.
No.
Hold
on. Please let me answer the question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So no, there's the site plan. If you choose to waive the site plan hearing and you approve the site plan, you're approving the revegetation plan, whatever screening they've put together.
I get it. Yeah.
And that is for the public hearing on the artist studio. Those are all untouchable issues.
Right. So we're abandoning one for the other. We're not combining them.
Well, let me ask you this, Thomas. Do we have to abandon one for the other, or can we have a public hearing on both of them?
You can have a public hearing on both, but if the board chooses to waive the public hearing on the site plan, approves the site plan, and then holds a public hearing, which it's required to do on the artist studio,
Right. Okay.
then the conditions, the approval will not be regarding the revegetation.
Yeah, it won't be subject. Yeah, it won't be subject to those conditions. Then I don't agree. I think we need to have a public hearing on both of them.
But we can schedule those public hearings for the same time, can't we?
As a practical matter, I think we can, but I think we need to have a public hearing on each, issue separately.
I would check with John on that, but I I think so. I mean,
Yeah,
I would.
all right.
Be back-to-back hearings, couldn't they?
It's gonna be a longer announcement for Randy to have to read, so.
Oh, great.
What if we just added, if they want more screening during the artist studio hearing, I mean, you can add to the revegetation at that point. Maybe you can't, change the exact thing, but you could keep adding to it and improving. Couldn't you?
I think that's what I think I'm getting from Thomas, that that's not what we can do.
If the board issues an approval for the revegetation plan before the artist studio public hearing, it's a settled issue. You can't return to it.
The public hearing is going to be about what we approve. So, all right, let's go through the questions, because again, we're spending a lot of time on a matter that doesn't, shouldn't be this long. Does the board find measures to mitigate the impacts of the clearing acceptable?
Not really.
No.
No?
Yeah.
How many people say, let me just get yes and no on that.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do, yes.
Sharon,
Well,
and Sharon,
does that, excuse me.
Yes, I said.
Does that include the fence? If we say yes, does that mean?
That's a separate question. It's a second.
Well, it's not a separate question. We can ask if there's a different fence that we want them to utilize, but a fence.
Yeah, those, we say split rail. I think Kathleen's right.
Okay.
But
What's higher?
folks, the idea is that they're proposing a fence as part of their mitigation.
Yeah, but I think we need to tell them what kind.
But the clearing mitigation, including a fence, do we find that acceptable?
Well, then can we go back when we have the artist studio hearing and ask for a condition of some screening or along the property line?
I don't think so. I think that's what Thomas is saying.
Let Thomas answer that question.
It depends on if you waive this public hearing and approve, if the board issues an approval for this revegetation plan, this mitigation, then the answer is no.
Why? Because if they're separate, Thomas, then.
Because they're separate.
Well, no, but I mean, why can't we decide that we need mitigation for visibility and sound for the artist studio and make a condition of that approval that there's more screening?
I think.
Well, if we can't
make a decision on, or you could leave them both open and have both public hearings.
I'm sorry, Thomas?
I said, or you could leave them both open and have both public hearings.
And isn't one of the questions, should a separate revegetation plan be submitted? I mean.
Yes, that's the next.
Right, but I'm saying,
But that revegetation plan, I think, has to do with specifics in the area that they're.
I understand that. I got it.
Well,
I voted for two separate public hearings for that reason.
Right. It would be strange, though, if we permitted clearing and then that meant that we could never screen anything else that happened in that property. I don't think that would be. I get we wouldn't be able to mess with this area of revegetation once it was approved because they would have an approval. But if they then come back with this other proposal to build an artist studio, seems like we would always consider screening that from neighbors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but the parts of this lot that we might ask to have screened are before us now as part of this site plan.
Peters Pond?
It doesn't mean.
I don't think it is. I think that the proposed revegetation on the site plan are on that round corner, which I think we would all agree is a good part to buffer from that roadway. Then there's this fence proposed. Everything else, there's clearing lines depicted, but nothing says that we can't require them to put a tree up or something to block. I mean, as he said, it's not going to be a revegetation necessarily, but he does want to screen the artist studio, which I think I'm okay with, talking about those details later.
Those screening issues can come up in the context of the artist studio application, correct? Right. So then the question is just with respect to the fact that he has to revegetate. It's a simple question. Do we find the plans to revegetate? Forget the artist studio issue. Do we find these plans to be acceptable? And,
Yeah,
and again, I mean,
I don't. I want them to revegetate according to the recommendations. I don't want to see pitch pine in there. I think white pine is better. I think
well, I thought we had an
bush,
indication.
blueberry and all the rest.
I thought I heard the applicant say that that's what they were gonna do.
But that's not part of the
Yeah, but
rebate.
that's not the question you're asking us to answer.
I think we're conflating, look, the planning department asked for a better plan to more clearly depict what they're gonna
Right.
plant in this area. I
So
think
that's
that's
what
a
we
good
want.
idea. I think
Yeah.
that this area that they're proposing to revegetate to get them under the 65% threshold is the appropriate area because it leaves a lot of room for us to work with this artist studio if we decide to move that around a little bit. I think the only other question that I would have is the fence. It seems like none of us love the stockade fence. I think a fence is a good idea to protect that revegetation plan, but maybe something more subtle. I think Kathy's right, though, that a more specific plan should happen, but we can give the guidance that if they do that to the planning department standards, we're good with this. And I would be for one.
Yeah, that's like question number 3, the revegetation plan proposed by the planning department.
Well, okay, then I guess the first question is, if you can answer no to the first question, you can answer yes to the second question about a different fence, and then you can answer yes to the third question
Right.
to support the planning department's plan.
Right.
Is there a consensus on that before we get to the public hearing question?
Yes.
All around the table, is there a consensus that we don't find the measures to mitigate the impacts of clearing as proposed by the applicant to be acceptable? We don't want them to use the fencing, a stockade fence. We would prefer a split rail. And we would want the applicant to submit a revegetation plan as described by the planning department. Is that the consensus of the board?
Yep. I do have one thing that I need clarified.
Go,
Sam.
Yeah, please.
And that is, the role of fencing in mitigating the clearing, right? I mean, is this purely meant to be a visual, part of screening, the portion that's cleared from the road? I mean, how does the fence play a role?
That's a really good question because
and particularly if we're going to start saying put up a split rail instead of stockade, what's the point?
I'm with you on that.
Well, it screens it from the road. I went by it today. It would screen it more from the road as you look back in.
But not a split rail fence.
And
Well, no, the split rail, I think the fence is just supposed to support the vegetation.
The reason I would support a fence, Ed, is because it keeps that area that's revegetated uncleared. Sometimes things creep and we want to put a buffer in. You're right, the split rail wouldn't be a visual screening necessarily, but it would prevent the clearing to creep back into that revegetated area.
And in any event, it's more attractive than a stockade.
Okay, all right, well, no, that makes sense.
All right, so board, no to the first question, no to the second question, yes to the third question, correct? All around?
Yeah.
Good. Last, does the board wish to waive the public hearing requirement for the site plan, noting that the artist studio application will require a public hearing?
No.
No, all right, let me go around the table. Sharon, I'll start with you. Public hearing on this.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm still unclear, like if we can do screening later and call it screening and not revegetation, then I think we can waive the public hearing.
Okay, Randy.
I agree with Sharon, but Thomas said.
Okay. If it's screening specifically related to the artist studio and is not considered part of a revegetation plan, then that's fine. But the board can't approve a revegetation plan, I think, and then turn around and require on the artist studio any further revegetation.
Well, let me ask you this.
Because the revegetation is about bringing the clearance back into compliance, right? And then if right now we're just trying to get the property back into compliance.
Yeah, actually, let me just ask a question. If we're telling them to submit a new revegetation plan according to what the planning department suggested, do we need to even address the public hearing question right now?
Wait, can I just ask a question?
Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, Eric suggested that strip. Eric thought that that strip of revegetation was adequate, right? I believe.
Yes, that's
All
correct.
you need is just details on what's going to go in there, right?
Correct.
So that's all you need from us. I mean, basically, you want like a list of what needs to go in there.
Yeah. And can I don't mean to cut you off, Mark, so if you have more, go ahead. But I'm listening to the whole conversation. I'm trying not to confuse it anymore. But just to clarify a couple of points here, they are not over cleared on the property. According to the as-built survey, they're at 62% roughly, whereas they're allowed 65% roughly if they built a single family residence. Since they're not building a single family residence, they need to come before this board for site plan approval, and they need to meet all of the site plan standards. The idea, I spoke with Mark and with Nick about this, and the idea of putting that buffer along Lafayette Place was not to bring the property into compliance with the clearing requirement. It was to buffer Lafayette Place. So it wasn't a question of quantity of clearing. It was a question of location. So my recommendation for that area would be to revegetate it, with there being a key point, and Sharon, I think, was alluding to this, a key difference between landscaping and revegetating. Revegetating is bringing an area of a property back into close to what the natural habitat type is, which over here, it's mostly oak, but oak isn't going to provide you a lot of screening. So I recommended pitch pine because there are a couple on the property. Nick is correct. There are a couple of white pines here, but I mean, you can clearly see on this aerial that it's mostly all oaks with huckleberry. So the idea that we had was to revegetate the portion along Lafayette Place, and then also possibly put up a fence so that you couldn't see clearly into the interior of the property. With that in mind, it was my understanding that all of the site plan standards don't apply to the artist studio application because it's a separate type of application. However, and Thomas, I think, said this earlier, that doesn't mean that if the board feels that there's landscaping and screening measurements that need to be employed for the artist studio to meet the standards that are laid out for the artist studio, that this board can't require them. I mean, among those two is that the board may want to see the artist studio relocated from where it's currently proposed. However, the idea of that buffer along Lafayette Place was just to address the things that triggered the site plan, that being the clearing. I don't think that you saying that that's okay to alleviate the things that triggered the site plan, that being the clearing, precludes you from requiring further landscaping. I'm not even getting the impression that the applicants are totally averse to providing that, to provide screening, again, with the difference being stated between landscaping and revegetation. I mean, I think you should ask them that if they're willing to also augment this with some landscaping near the artist studio. It sounds like the applicant was planning to plant some arborvitae and things of that sort on the property. Presumably, there's going to be a lawn in the area that's cleared, which is just dirt right now. So I would anticipate that there's going to be some landscaping on this property in the future. So I don't think that you're necessarily stopped from getting a good layout in association with the artist studio by generally agreeing to remedying the issues regarding the clearing. And again, the revegetation they're proposing brings them to 55% cleared. They're allowed as a matter of right up to 65%. Yeah. So I don't think that if you say that this is okay, that it precludes you from providing appropriate buffers as part of the artist studio review. And the last thing I'd point out is that they are asking for an artist studio that's over 600 square feet. It's over the maximum accessory structure size. So you as a board need to make an exception, and this is under the artist studio regulations, and you need to find that it's compatible with the residential neighborhood. I would think part of that is appropriate buffering for noise and the appearance of the building. I'll leave it at that. I hope that clarifies things a little bit, but I'll
Eric, I think that you did a really good job there summarizing it, but the issue I have is with us approving this so-called revegetation plan And I agree that a fence is not part of a revegetation plan. What if we get the artist studio application and we feel that the access into the property should be shifted slightly, and we've approved this buffer? I think we have to look at the site plan. We have to look at them together.
Well,
Yeah, there's certainly validity to that as far as addressing the pertinent issues. But, I don't want to speak for Thomas, but do keep in mind that you do have this weird situation where the artist studio applications don't have to meet the site plan standards. The site plan standards were only triggered in this case because of the clearing. So this is a very weird situation. I mean, I don't think this has ever been encountered by any board in this town where these two regulations were coming into play in the same project. But yeah, it's a very unique situation.
So that's why I'm trying to keep this conversation as narrow as I can.
Yeah.
Because we are buying, we're going further afield, far further afield than we should be on this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, at this point, I think the only question that we have is public hearing for the site plan. And just a straight yes or no on that, so we can move on to the, other matters that we have on the agenda that deserve our attention as well. So, Randy, just yes or no on a public hearing on the site plan on this artist on the revegetation.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking Randy. I was going around the table.
Well, again,
yes or no, Randy, please. I
want to know how the two work together. I don't want us to approve a site plan that locks us into something that doesn't work with the artist studio application.
Then we'll have to modify the site plan.
Yeah.
That's right.
It sounds like you want to not waive the public hearing.
What, Thomas?
It sounds like what he wants to do is not waive the public hearing and try to have both public hearings at the same time.
I mean, that sounds fun.
That's good, because then we won't have approved the site plan.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's been my position too. And is it okay for me to talk now? Randy, are you done? What?
Just a yes or no on whether we want a public hearing.
Yes.
The answer, Sharon, did you say yes or no? I've lost track of it.
She said no.
I mean, I said no, but I have not had a problem with having them together. So, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead, Murph.
Before you.
For another vote?
This whole thing is about this vegetation. And if you want to get, if you want a public hearing about vegetating this property, I mean, you may have, if we vegetate enough of it, we don't even need a site plan. I mean, that's the real question is, you should be able to just vote on whether this proposed strip is sufficient, and then we can move on to the actual main thing, which is whether you're going to approve this art studio, which probably should have been the first thing I think decided before we got into all this. I mean, you may decide not to approve that, and suddenly we spent all this time on a site plan, which
we're stuck with having to do this.
Doesn't fit what's even being applied for. I mean, the site plan standards, this is a residential use in a residential lot, and suddenly we got a site plan thing, and if he wants to move it, he's got to modify the site plan. He's got to have to get ARB approval. I mean, it doesn't seem to fit at all. So, I mean, we really just got a vegetation question that should be easily, I think, anyway, determined now. And then when you do the hearing on the art studio, you can impose some other conditions. I just think this is dragging on forever in a way that it shouldn't have done. And it's not your fault. It's just the way the code seems to push this.
Well, we're in the middle of trying to decide this issue. But let me ask, while I'm understanding that we're in the middle of it and you're raising it, that what I think is a very valid point. Thomas, can we just limit ourselves to the approval of the revegetation plan at this point?
Yes, you can, but it sounds like from the input from Randy and other members that you don't want to do that. You can. It's absolutely within the board's right to waive the public hearing for the site plan and approve a revegetation plan and then move on to the artist studio.
But at the same time, it's also within the board's, it's the right of the board to say that we're going to have a public hearing about that, even if we approve
Well, if you're having a public hearing, you're not approving a revegetation plan.
Exactly. We're waiting for public comment on the revegetation plan to see if there's any, if any of the neighbors have any suggestions. That's the point of the public hearing. We would set the notice for, whatever comes back to us with the revegetation plan that most of us seem to support as part of the questions.
Plus, if we hear them together.
Stop. The problem is that we've had a revegetation plan that we said that the planning department suggested, which if I heard the applicant correctly, the applicant is willing to do. Mark, am I wrong on that?
You're absolutely right.
So that's why I'm caught here. If the planning board, if we all agree that the planning department's revegetation plan is acceptable, and if the applicant says that's what I'm going to do, then what is the point of going any further? Well, we've approved it, and that's my question.
You can't approve it before you have a hearing, Sam, unless you're going to waive.
Unless you waive the public hearing.
Right.
Well, but we can.
Look,
you have to waive the public hearing in order to approve this tonight.
If we hear them both together, we're going to have processed the artist studio site plan more than we have now. What's the status of that application? Is it being held up because of this?
Yes.
Why don't we process them both?
Well, let's let Eric. Let's let Eric answer the question. Eric.
Oh no, I was just gonna say basically yes.
We made them file this application because of the clearing. It wasn't their choice.
So let's process them both.
Well, yeah, but we're processing this one tonight, so.
Right.
Let's finish then with the decision about whether or not to have a public hearing. That was Randy said. Sharon, I don't remember. I know I've said it twice. You're okay with a public
Just
hearing?
ask the rest of the board and see where we land. I'm at this point, I'm so confused. It's been going around in circles. I said no to a public hearing if we can go ahead and approve screening later.
And then Randy, you want a public hearing. Kathy, you want a public hearing.
Yeah, but I'd like to say a little bit more about that the screening that I think, would occur, I would like the neighbors to be able to weigh in on this because there's a lot of neighbors affected by this clearing. And maybe they don't care, which is fine. But, if I lived next to a lot that was fully wooded and it was suddenly cleared, I would want to know about it. I just think it's, and it's also not for nothing. This is in the 3 Mile Harbor watershed, so, and these big oaks were good filters for that. So I understand that they're within the clearing limits and all the rest, but this is, I think we have to be careful. I think we have to tread carefully here on what we approve and how, and our process because of that.
Okay. So you want a public hearing?
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. Ian.
I don't think a public hearing is necessary.
Very good. Lou.
I'm going to vote no and just give my 2 cents. I know that this has been going on for a while, but if Nick Cohen hadn't cleared this property, we would have just gone to the site plan review on the artist studio. And also by him revegetating, by submitting the revegetation plan, which by the way, I vote that is also adequate. That's my vote on that. By him submitting that plan, he's bringing the vegetation to 55%, which is 10 percentage points below the minimum. So I think it's adequate. And to Kathy's point that he cleared everything and the neighbors no longer have that, and it's a mistake that they should weigh in on. But he has the right on this property, because it's an adjoining property, he has the right to build this artist studio and clear it to 65%. So he's doing better than that. So
That's not right, Sam. I mean, Lou, that he has the right to do that. He has to get approvals.
Listen, I really don't want a lot of cross
all right,
conversation.
anyway, my vote is no on the public hearing.
An hour, okay? I mean, I really don't like to bang the drum like that, but Lou's making his point. Let him make his point, and then we can, go on. It's enough. Go ahead, Lou.
What I meant was that the code allows him. I know he's got to go, and with the application of the site plan, but the code allows the adjoining lot to have an accessory structure, as Eric had pointed out. And he's within the clearing bounds that the code requires. So for me, I think that the revegetation plan is adequate, and I vote no for public hearing.
Very good. And Ed, you're wrapping us up. Well, then I'll go.
Okay.
And then
look at this has been hard enough for us as the planning board to wrap our minds around, how this is such a unique situation, right? And, the idea of having, two separate public hearings on this thing would really confuse the public doing the commenting. I feel like, after having all this discussion about it, that we have the opportunity to sort of, impose what we need to have happen when we see the artist studio application. I don't see how this is really limiting us. So therefore, I vote no on a public hearing, and the revegetation plan is fine with me.
Okay. And Sharon, did you want to chime in before I go? Because I thought you said
No, I'm good.
All right. I'm associating myself with everything that Ian, Ed, and Lou said. We don't need a public hearing. It's going to be, Ed made a great point, which has been floating in my head about how confusing it's going to be. I also think that the point that the applicant made is a very valid one, that if they're willing to do what the planning department suggested, which they said they're willing to do, then that, to me, that ends the conversation. So I think what we have is 4 people against the public hearing, unless Sharon, you're against the public hearing?
No, I don't think we need one. If we,
All right, so that's 5-2, no public hearing. Thank you. And now we can move on to the next one. And applicant, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you on your artist studio application.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks. Next, 44 3 Mile Harbor. The applicant is, I saw Ms. Glazer there representing the applicant. And Sharon, this is yours. Marco.
I believe Rick is on this too.
Oh, Rick, you're on this one also?
Myself and Pam, but also I think Rick Van Menschoten, the property owner, is observing as well.
Very good. Okay, very well. All right, Marco, please take us on this one.
Okay, I'm gonna share screen. This has been reviewed before. So this is an application to basically change the use of an expanded non-conforming building by proposing a first floor retail space, second floor office space, 2 second floor affordable apartments, paved parking areas, and extensive landscaping. There were no revised floor plans that were submitted at the time of review, but the planning department notes that some areas were increased, 225 square feet to the first floor. Some areas were decreased, which is minus 430 square feet to the second floor. There's a separate loading zone, parking lot, extensive landscaping along 3 Mile Harbor Road, which was proposed previously before. The floor plans depicting the revisions to the square footages have not been submitted yet at the time of review. During the review, revisions and clarifications should be made to the setbacks, parking, and coverage calculations. Actually, let me put that up over here. All proposed setbacks should be depicted from the property line to the proposed additions. The square footages of the plans should also be revised for additional clarity. At the moment, it appears as if the proposed basement and floors are smaller than the existing when they are proposed additions to the structure. The applicant should relabel the notations as proposed basement or proposed floor addition to avoid confusion. The site plan demonstrates that the building meets pyramid law. However, the conceptual elevation depictions appear to be unchanged and should be addressed. The site plan revision dates also do not appear to be consistent for when the revisions were made to the project. The lines denoting the property line, second floor, and topography are unclear to the marked areas and are similar or matching in their color or pattern. The site plan is unclear as to which areas are to be added to existing structures. The apartments overhanging the parking spaces 24 to 26 should be indicated as part of the additions to the existing building, including any other areas of overhang on the site plans. So basically what I'm referring to is that it appears that, if you're going by the red square box, it's like that's the only part that's part of the second floor. However, this box here is actually denoting where the second floor affordable apartments are. And so, I understand that 24, 25, and 26 parking spaces are being depicted on here, but there should be something that, makes it clear and obvious that there's an addition here as well. Overall, they made minor alterations to the parking calculations as well. The number of required spaces has not changed. A total of 59 parking spaces will be required, which is 39 for retail use, 18 for office use, and 2 for affordable apartments. The applicant has proposed 48 parking spaces. In total, a variance of 11 parking spaces will be required. The applicant has made a revision to the loading dock located along 3 Mile Harbor Road by adding an island for plantings in between the dock and the road. So where I'm circling right now, where the loading dock is, this island here is newly proposed. This curbing is slightly different, as in it bends in now. That's different from the last review. The applicant has filed an application with the ZBA, and the planning board may wish to send comments to the ZBA regarding the site plan's design and parking. There were no landscaping plans submitted yet, no lighting plans submitted yet at the time of review. What the applicant has submitted, though, was a sanitary plan, which was prepared by PW Grosser Consulting, which I'll put up here. And I'll just zoom in a little bit. So the proposed sanitary flow is 1,007 gallons per day, which is less than the grandfathered flow of 3,600 gallons per day. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing sanitary system, which is in a faint gray line. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but on the plans it's a little bit fainter. And then the darker circles are where the 2 IA systems, a grease trap, and 5 10-foot by 8-foot bleaching pools are to be. The test hole data from the initial site plan survey show that the groundwater is encountered at 11.9 feet from the surface. In order to ensure that a 3-foot separation to groundwater can be provided, a leaching pool profile should be revised to be consistent with the test hole data and to reflect an actual proposal. At the moment, it's just, I believe it's just a standard picture, and so it doesn't really reflect the actual proposal. As you can see here, it says 25-foot max, which is, I think, is a standard depiction of it. The sanitary plans should also demonstrate that the leaching pools meet the appropriate setback from private wells, which is 150 feet. Approval from the Suffolk County Department of Health Services will be required as part of the project's conditions of approval. It says here this is a private well over here, so just a depiction showing that the sanitary system is within the appropriate setback. There are no drainage or grading. So there's no drainage or runoff mitigation plans that were submitted at the time of review. There is a proposed bioswale with an island of plantings, which is over here on 3 Mile Harbor Road. This area in general is slightly higher than the site itself. It drops down a little bit. So the applicant should provide a drainage plan and drainage calculations and structures that are prepared and signed by a licensed professional demonstrating proper mitigation from potential flooding from stormwater. The fire marshal has stated that the proposed project is ADA compliant. However, it is unclear if the plans reviewed by the fire marshal included the floor plans, since the planning department ones had them omitted. That is something that needs to be double checked. Landscaping beyond the property line and alterations for the proposed accessway will require review and approval from the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. Approval from the DPW will be required as part of the project's conditions of approval. And so there is a list of items that should be submitted, and that includes a survey of existing buildings, structures, and uses, survey of proposed structures, revisions to be made to the site plan, elevation drawings north, south, east, and west, floor plans, drainage plans, lighting, and landscaping. In conclusion, the applicant has submitted a sanitary plan, alterations to the landscaping, and alterations to the square footages of the building. The applicant should address the revisions to be made, submit a drainage plan, and other additional details listed under the site plan review.
All right, thank you very much, Marco. Appreciate the thoroughness of that report, as always. The question I have for Mr. Whalen is, are you going to be speaking for the applicant? Or
I'm going to be speaking, Sam. I think that you might also hear from Pam, but I would propose to speak first.
That'll be fine. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. First of all, in light of the prior discussion, I want to try to make this as easy for you and as expeditious as possible. So first of all, what this revised site plan was intended to accomplish, first of all, there was a stairway that had been proposed within the side yard setback to the north. We had parts of the structure that were encroaching on the pyramid law. We don't want to be seeking variances for side yard setbacks or pyramid law setbacks, so we had to change the design of the plan to show that. And those changes have, as Marco have just noted, have been made. We increased the number of parking spaces, Pam did. Pam Glazer increased the number of parking spaces to 48. We added a truck loading space as indicated, as Marco just discussed, on the 3 Mile Harbor Road side of the existing building. And we gave you a sanitary plan and so forth. It's important to understand the following. We need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a parking variance. I'll come back to the parking variance number in a second. But we need to go to the Zoning Board and see if we're able to get a parking variance for it looks like the 11 parking spaces by which we are short. If we don't get a variance from the Zoning Board, then the entire dynamic of the application changes. The applicant has to consider whether either to revise the application and downscale the building, or getting back talk there, or to abandon the project and continue running the nightclub. So there are some of the things which Marco mentions in the memo, and they've been mentioned before, such as a detailed landscaping plan. We're showing you the general landscaping. You have that on the site plan. You don't have the exact details as to the individual species, number of, size of trees and so forth. You don't have a detailed lighting plan. You don't have a detailed drainage plan. I don't believe that those things are going to be necessary for the zoning board to decide whether or not to grant a parking variance. We don't want to spend the time and effort to provide all of that information until we know that the basic site plan is going forward. And there's no way for us to know that the basic site plan is going to go forward unless and until we can get a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's the essential thing to be dealt with in my view right now. These additional additional information such as, for example, the siding of the building or the colors of the building, which the ARB would need. Again, we don't want to go there now because that's not needed for the zoning board. And until we know that the basic site plan is approvable, we don't want to spend the time and the effort and the money to do those things.
So let me ask you a question. So are you saying that you want to hold this application in abeyance pending your?
No. What we want to do basically is we want the application deemed complete for the purposes of the zoning board so we can have our zoning variance. Now, I do want to say there's a second element of things which Marco refers to, and for those I'll defer to Pam, and those have to do with some of the drawings and how clearly they show things. I'm not so much speaking about that. I understand, some of his concerns about, whether or not, we're clear enough in showing, second floor and so forth. So those are things which I'm happy to have you address tonight, but I just want to make sure before you get into landscaping details and lighting details, it's premature. We don't have, this is almost like a preliminary site plan. And until we know we have a parking variance to allow the building of this size to be built, there's no point in worrying about, the details of the lighting, the landscaping, or even the drainage. I mean, at the end of the day, the drainage in the parking lot will be accommodated. You won't approve it unless it is, unless your engineer says it is. We have engineers who are going to be designing it. Those things will be worked out. The question right now is the general layout of the plan, which you seem to have liked based on prior review. But the crucial thing then is the number of parking spaces. And, we are short, it appears, by 11 parking spaces. We have to make an application to the zoning board for that. We have an application pending, but that application has not yet been deemed complete, pending where you are. So what we really want you to do, this is the way you can help us, is to agree with the planning department that the zoning board part of the application should be complete so that we can get into the lineup, into the queue and have a public hearing at the zoning board. Because until we know that we can get the parking variance, we're nowhere until we have the parking variance.
All right, let me ask I'm going to turn it over to Sharon. This is Sharon, it's your application.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear from you, but I also want to hear from, when we're done or before we wrap, I want to hear from Thomas about going ahead in the way in which it's been suggested. So, Sharon, why don't you lead us?
Yeah, no, Rick said exactly what was on my mind. When I saw this again, I'm like, this is all pending on the parking variance. So when I saw it on tonight, I was hoping that some of that had been resolved, but I understand what he needs. So, I don't have an issue with these small changes. I think they should just be clarified for the zoning board, so they know exactly what, we're looking at. So what, the little clarifications that Marco has suggested, I think are a good idea. But in terms of, we need to know if this is anything, without that variance, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I agree with Rick that, I don't think we deem it complete, right? We just say that this is the layout that we want, or that we agree that this is the layout that we want to present to the zoning board.
Yeah,
can I make a point of clarification?
Yeah, please.
So the planning board is not just to be clear, the planning board is not the gatekeeper for the zoning board. But the way things traditionally work at the zoning board level is the planning department essentially is. So what we're looking for is a determination at the zoning board level, not your level, because it's understood. We understand that before we can get site plan approval, if we get a variance in the zoning board, we have to come back to you and you're going to want to have the landscaping, lighting, all those details. We understand that. So I'm talking about completeness for the purposes of the zoning board and their public hearing.
We can't technically deem it complete in the legal sense, but if we don't like this general layout, then the variance they're asking for wouldn't make sense if the parking spaces don't match.
Right.
So we do have to say that we like it enough to, so that the variance would apply.
Right. If you don't like the layout, then that's another reason we wouldn't want to go forward.
Right.
That's why I want to make sure from council that we can do that kind of I don't want to use the word, certainly not approval, or deem it complete or any, I don't want to use the wrong word, and
So,
limit,
I mean,
limit us.
yeah, on any application that requires a variance, the planning board can't make a determination it's complete until you got the variance. I mean, I agree with Ian that the purpose on any application of the planning board reviewing it before it goes to zoning board is that the layout, the general dimensions are, you know, I don't know if the word satisfactory, but are not going to be changed drastically after they grant the variance, nullifying the variance. So I don't see if the board wants to, you know, have them go to, or if they want to go to the ZBA with the application in its current state, as long as the planning board is, you know, reviewed the layout and doesn't see any changes, I don't see a problem with that.
So we can basically approve the layout, or not approve, but express our satisfaction with it.
We're just giving them guidance to say, hey, we think we can work with this, try for the variance.
Yeah, I'm doing the lawyer thing where I'm getting stuck looking for a word to call what we're doing.
There will be no resolution. There's just a general consensus here, and then, you know, if it's good for them, they'll go forward.
Actually, consensus might be the best word. That there.
I mean, I don't think the parking can change much, you know, so I don't know, you know, I think we're approving the parking layout basically.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So then I guess really the only question that we really need to ask is, does the board find the general layout to be acceptable?
Agreeable is a good word, I think.
That's close enough. To be agreeable, about which we can agree. Yes. Is there anyone who disagrees that it's agreeable? I'm asking the board.
Nope, it's agreeable.
It's agreeable. Anyone? Does anyone disagree?
I just want to thank the applicant. I think they did a good job coming back to us. You know, we've seen this several times. And I think generally they're just asking if we're supportive of this layout. One thing I did want to mention for their consideration is that the 3 Mile Harbor Road is going to be improved, and there are going to be sidewalks put in and so on, so that the loading dock and so on, the parts of the site plan that they have in the Suffolk County right-of-way there are things that they should be aware of, the fact that that's going to happen. I don't want to see them put a lot of stock into that element of this site plan without knowing that the county may rip it out, you know. So I think it's important to be in touch with the county about their plans, and especially that one island there that's in front of the loading dock, which is almost all within the county right of way. That seems vulnerable to me. The other part of the landscaping and screening, I mean, I like what's there. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. And I would like them to research that so that they're not, barking up another tree.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Kathy, because, I'm sure that the applicant knows, Mr. Whalen knows that, he can talk to the planning department. I think that Eric is kind of in the know on this, and make sure you guys don't spend a lot of time on something only to find that you can't do what you have in mind. So
yeah, no, I completely agree with the comments made there. We have to get feedback from the Suffolk County DPW. Totally agree.
All right.
And I agree with that too, Sam. I just want to add one thing.
Go ahead.
For the applicant's benefit. One of our concerns last time, and mine in particular, was that loading dock. So, all the more important to make sure your plans are compatible with Public Works Department, and that whole thing fits together, because that loading dock certainly needs some screening. So if the screening's not possible, it would change my opinion on leaving that.
Yeah, and also speaking of the loading dock, I really want to make sure that your engineers have given it, a thorough vetting, because you're coming in and off of 3 Mile Harbor Road there, and I'm not an engineer, but it sure looks tight to me. So
Yeah, that would be the rest of my point too. Another, generally this layout looks good. I think they've come a long way, but if that proves not to, pass our engineers, muster, it will be problems. So it would behoove them to make sure it works.
Yeah, or Suffolk County, because I mean, as
right, yeah,
county road. So,
right, and they, look, I can look at it too, and I don't know for sure if they will approve it. So we need their input.
Yeah. If you have a smart car, it'll work just fine. But
and if I could just jump in as the owner really quick, I just want to throw out a bunch of thank yous because you've been great to work with, and I think the fact that the last 2 meetings you've said thank you for scaling back the project and trying to understand where the town is coming from, and I think Rick and Pam have done a great job in trying to have your understanding and my understanding as a developer here, so we've really come to what we think is a very good common ground. And I think we've gotten to a point where hopefully you're comfortable and it allows us to go out to the zoning board and the other places that we need to be able to come back to you and say, okay, it looks good. Now we'll do the final tweaks with you guys. So I appreciate how you've handled all of this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Just before I hand it off to the CBA, is there anybody who isn't agreeable that it's agreeable among the board? All right, so
I'm going to be the naysayer.
there you go.
There he is.
I think 11 spaces short is too many, and I'm still uncomfortable with the use of the county right of way and the truck. So I'm not necessarily a yes vote on this site plan, even if they get the variance. That's all.
All right, well, but now they can go on and get the variance because
Good enough.
they have the sense. All right, very good. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
We'll look forward to seeing you again. All right, next on our agenda is new singular wireless at Town Hall modification number 6. We have Eric. We have
Matt Limbaum.
Who's the applicant?
Matt Limbaum.
Mr. Limbaum, there you are. Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting. And Kathy, you're the board on this. So Eric,
Sure.
Let's do it.
If you'll recall, the last time this was reviewed, and this is an application for an emergency backup diesel, gas generator at Town Hall here. The last outstanding issue was the noise generation from the generator. The applicants had submitted information that demonstrated that they would not meet the noise standards of the town code. They've since amended the application to include a sound attenuating enclosure for the generator. They submitted a report from an engineer along with details of that fixture. And I attached that to the memorandum. They demonstrate compliance with the town code. So it looks like all outstanding issues have been addressed. Again, as a tier 2 modification, you can waive the public hearing requirement. You have done so for most of the previous modifications, including the most recent one for this facility. So you should decide that. And then if you do agree to waive the public hearing, then the application is complete and ready for approval. And we have prepared the resolution of approval for the modification for you for this evening.
Very good. Thank you. The applicant, Mr. Limbaum. Do you have anything
Yes, sir. No, we did also get the ARB approval on I think that was the 12th or 13th. I don't remember the date, but we did get the ARB approval also.
Very good. Thank you. Kathy, yours.
Yeah, this has been kicking around for a while. I think it's good to go. I want to thank the applicant for, finally getting the noise outputs compliant. And I think I would recommend waiving the public hearing and adopting this tonight just to put it to bed at long last.
Very good. All right. Does anyone think that, I guess the only question you really need is public hearing.
You have to decide, kind of decide if the application is complete, because it complies with the
Yeah.
noise ordinance, and then
Yeah.
we want to have a public hearing.
Yeah, okay, so do we all agree that it complies with the noise ordinance, chapter 185?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone disagree? Okay, we all agree. Now, do we wish to waive the public hearing? Although, is there anyone who does not wish to waive the public hearing on this one? No one? In that case, we will waive the public hearing. Okay, thank you very much.
So can we vote to approve it then? Let's
Do we need-
vote to approve it, and then we can read the resolution.
Did I miss a
by
step
Mr.
on
Lynn.
this?
Well, I think we got to, technically we have to approve the resolution in the regular meeting.
Oh, I see. Well, we've done this before, though.
Yeah, we jumped into the regular. Do we need to do that?
I
Keeps him waiting.
Go to a regular meeting and then come back to the work
All right.
session.
I have,
whatever, it's fine.
Kathy, can you make a motion?
I'd like to move that we go to the regular meeting so we can issue this resolution of approval for the,
Is there a second?
that's what I have to do. I don't know.
Second.
All those in favor of going into regular meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, in that case, we are now in regular meeting. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, in the matter of the application of New Singular Wireless, AKA AT&T, at Town Hall Site Plan, Special Permit, Personal Wireless Service Facility Modification 6, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-188-1-4. A resolution amending approval with the stated conditions to modify, which is basically to make sure everything is in accordance with the plan and a building permit and CO are obtained. I read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed and carried 7-0. Do we need to make a resolution to go back out of regular meeting, or is that that?
I move that we go back into a work session.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of going back into work session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't think we've ever done that before. We are now back in work session.
We've never done it before.
No, we've never done that before, but we'll
That was magic.
well,
First for everything, first time for everything, as the saying goes.
Carry on.
there are things like we had to do the executive session at the end of the meeting that, we get advice from council, things change, laws, decisions are made elsewhere that impact us. And so we follow our council's advice on these kinds of things.
Hey,
Because we don't want to do it wrong. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lindbaum. Is there anything else that you might need from us?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Thank you very much. Okay,
Bye.
the last on the regular site plan, we do have an artist studio after this. The last of the regular site plan matters is the East Hampton House pool modification. I see Ms. Wilshire there.
Yep.
Hello, Lori.
Hello.
Hello. We have Marco is the planning department, and Ed, you're the planning board on this. So, Marco, go right ahead.
Okay, so I've share screened. So this is a modification request to an approved site plan, East Hampton House Pool site plan, which is to revise, and this modification is to revise the site plan map to be built into two individual phases. The parcel is located off Panago Road in East Hampton and was granted site plan approval January 27, 2021. The site plan approval is for renovations to an existing pool area with brick paving, barbecue, patio area, a shed, walkways. It's to replace that one with new improvements. Basically, the applicant has proposed phase 1 to include renovations to the pool, deck, drywalls, fencing, shed doors, patio, and landscaping. And phase 2 is to only include the proposed walkway to the west. I'm just gonna zoom in a bit further. The proposed northern walkway has been omitted in favor of the existing northern walkway. The single major difference between the approved site plan and the proposed modification is the alteration made to the northern walkway. It's just the existing walkway path. So the applicant has submitted an as-built survey that indicates that the work to be associated with what would be phase 1 has already been completed. The applicant has stated that phase 2 is to be completed at a future date. A site plan should be submitted and revised to clearly depict which improvements are to be associated for phase 1 and for phase 2. In addition, the survey should be properly titled as East Hampton House Pool, site plan phases 1 and 2. In conclusion, the overall improvements are the same minus an alteration to the northern walkway. The planning department finds that the request to modify the site plan into 2 phases is within reason.
Very good. Thank you very much, Marco. Ms. Wiltshire, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just that we submitted what he requested in terms of the renewed title and calling out the 2 phases clearly on the survey. That's already been submitted. So I believe this can be put on for approval, or hopefully the resolution ready at the next meeting.
Very good. Okay, Ed.
Yeah, yes. This looks fine to me. This looks fine to me. I don't really see any issues whatsoever. Let's go ahead.
Okay, does anyone disagree with Ed? Look fine
I'm
to
just a little
everybody?
confused about if there are two site plans?
No, we have one approval for all of the project, but they didn't get the walkway done and they need to get a CO for the rest of the improvements that are done and as built. So we're splitting it into 2 phases. Phase 1 is everything that's already been built, which is the pool, the patio, the fencing. Phase 2 is the little green walkway, which will be built in the fall. And so what we need is to get an inspection done for the as-built work so we can get a certificate of occupancy for that. And then we'll come back in with a new building permit for just the walkway in the fall.
Right, I think I understand that part, but you've already, what we're approving for phase 1 has already been built, right?
Correct.
So you're coming back, you're coming retroactively for approval for what's already built.
No, you already approved what was built. We're just splitting it into 2 phases.
You're asking it to be phased.
Correct.
Okay.
Just taking that one piece out of it, Kathy.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just trying to understand. Okay, if one plan is sufficient, that's what Thomas thinks is okay, then that's all right with me.
Okay. So does the planning board find the modification within reason and in favor of modification to the resolution for approval?
Yep.
Yes.
All around?
Yep.
Happy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. See you next time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we now have the, and I hope I don't mispronounce Ms. Marin's, is it Marin or Maran, or am I mispronounced your name?
It's Marin.
Marin, I got it right the first time. All right, the application now is, we're doing an artist studio application, and again, as I mentioned earlier, remember that, we have a very specific set of standards that we have to follow with regard to the artist studio applications. And this one is in the residential area, as most of them are. So we have Eric is going to be on for the planning department. Sharon, this is yours, and there's Ms. Marin. Very well. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, Eric, take us away.
Sure. This is an application to convert a roughly 450 square foot, 1-story garage into an artist studio. The subject parcel is situated in Amagansett. It's zoned A residence, and it's not situated within any special environmental zones. It's currently improved with a 2-story single-family residence and associated accessory structures. As the board knows from review of past artist studios, the board must find that the applicant qualifies as a working artist with an attention to the definition of fine arts. The applicant has submitted information to this effect, including description of the applicant's art form, professional fine art resume, documentation relevant to their art form, and at least 3 letters of reference attesting to the artistic nature of the artist's work. And this information was submitted and was attached to the memorandum for the board's review. The town code has a limitation on plumbing. It says that the artist studio can't have anything besides a sink. That is what the applicants are proposing, a single sink with a single dry well. And they've added the notation required to the plans that say no bath, shower, toilet, or plumbing other than a sink is permitted. I will switch over to the survey here. As you'll see on the survey, the residence is basically in the center of the property. This is the roughly 450 square foot frame garage that is existing. It's in the southeastern portion of the property. That's the structure proposed to be turned into an artist studio. That structure is roughly 3 feet from the eastern property line, whereas a minimum setback of 10 foot is normally required. Again, this is a legally existing structure. It's CO'd, so that's a legally pre-existing non-conforming condition. The board may wish to discuss the potential for noise disturbance if this is converted from a garage to an artist studio. I will note that the information that was submitted by the artist says that their discipline is identified generally as drawing, painting, collage, and non-toxic printmaking, which should generally is not assumed to generate noise. Additionally, although I'm sure the applicant will speak to this, the board has received, and it is in the file, an email from the neighboring property owner saying that they're in support of the artist studio. So besides that, we just made a notation that there's covenants and restrictions that are standard that are required to be filed. And so basically, in summary, the board needs to consider the material submitted and whether or not the applicant can be considered a working artist. Second, the board needs to determine whether any additional information is required, particularly as may pertain to noise. The proposal appears to meet the remaining regulations for an artist studio and if no additional information is required, then the application is complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Ms. Marin, if you'd like, the floor is yours. If you have anything you'd like to add or say or respond, please go right ahead.
Well, I'd just like to say that I purchased this property a year ago in May. And I grew up, or I spent a lot of my, I've spent a lot of time in Amagansett. I started summering out there when I was very young, and it's been my dream to come to, I've been summering out there ever since I was about 10 years old. And I will soon retire from my university teaching job, and I'm hoping that I can spend more time out in Amagansett and use this structure as my working studio. Eric mentioned that the neighbor east of the property, the neighbor who's got the 3 foot, just 3 foot away from the garage, did write a letter of support. And I guess the only other thing I would say is that the garage, nothing changes. The footprint is exactly the same. And I even went, I blocked out that window, the existing window of the garage on the eastern side of the garage to mitigate any noise concerns prior to speaking with my neighbor.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's it? Nothing else to add?
I went to graduate school, studied painting. I have had numerous shows in the United States and abroad. I'm a university professor. I teach printmaking at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. My resume is fairly extensive, so I think you'll take a look at that and agree that I am a working artist.
Well, that'll be the first question we'll handle. All right, so let's hear from Sharon. You had a busy night tonight, Sharon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I've looked at all the materials that were submitted, and then I looked up, her name online, and I can say with confidence that I believe her to be an artist. And, like I said, she's been working as an artist for many, many years and has had a lot of shows through all those years. So really the only question would be, possibly noise. It doesn't sound like this is an artist that makes a lot of noise doing her art. I'm not sure what printmaking is, but what I've seen is not I don't think that's noisy. So, and then the other thing that I saw in the letters that were submitted by her colleagues was that this artist practices, she has a safe disposal of her toxic materials. So she's, very thoughtful about how she disposes of her paints and anything that might be, chemical related. So that was nice to see in the letters that were admitted. So I think it's good. And I don't think we need any more information at this time.
Terrific. Does anyone have anything more to add? In that case, I'll just put it to the board. Has the applicant demonstrated that they qualify as a working artist?
Yes.
Yes, unanimously?
Yep.
Good. Okay, so you are unanimously determined by the planning board to be a working artist. Do we require any additional information at this time?
No.
Anyone? Any members of the board?
Can we do that same thing we did last time with a covenant about not putting any toxic chemicals down the sink? That's just.
Would the applicant agree to that?
Yes, for sure.
Great.
Yeah, that was a concern that I wanted to raise too. That'd be great.
Is the applicant? Do we all agree the application is complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Very well. Okay,
Yes.
just so the applicant understands, there'll be a resolution at a future meeting. We'll schedule a public hearing. The public hearing will be sometime thereafter, and then after that, there'll be well, I don't want to make any assumptions. There'll be a public hearing, and then after that, the process will continue, but you're well along the way at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry you were the last one on the plate, but you got to watch the machinations of government. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Night.
Now, as a course of the regular course of events, we are now moving into our regular meeting, which we will start with 4 boards of review, which I'll read in. The first is the request of Pamela Drucker-Mann for a building permit on the premises located at 840 Springs Fireplace Road. Map number in the Springs, map number 455, block 3, lots 1 through 4, and number 17, urban 8. I'm sorry, my error. Lots numbers 1 through 4 and 17 through 18. Urban renewal parcel number 32 in Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-62-7-2.3. The amount of the undertaking is in the sum of $20,000. I've read the board of review and I move for its approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passed and carried 7-0. Next is the board of review at the request of Gabriel Q. De Silva for a building permit on the premises at 39 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett, map number 316, lot C, section C, lots 196-207, urban renewal parcel number 18, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-106-1-16. And the amount of the undertaking in this is $20,000. I have read the board of review and I move for its approval. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed and carried 7-0. Next is the board of review at the request of Angelica Franson for a building permit on the premises at 7 Fairview Terrace in Montauk, map number 1014, block 272A, lots portion of lot 2, portion of lot 3, and portion of lot 4, urban renewal parcel number 56A, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-19-8-10.4. The amount of the undertaking is $15,500. I have read the board review and I move for its approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passed and carried, 7-0. And finally, the Board of Review at the request of Carlos Barrio for a building permit on the premises located at 26 3rd Street, Springs, map number 365, block number 7, lots 32 to 36, urban renewal parcel number 27, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-60-5-15.1. The amount of the undertaking is in the sum of $24,000. I've read the Board of Review and I move for its approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed and carried, 7-0. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 members on the regular meeting. I'm going to be recusing on 5 Good Friend Drive. So Kathy, if you could take over that one, please.
Okay. We're starting with John Sebastianski, aren't we?
Well, I was going to come back and finish up with Sebastianski, so I was just going to ask you to do number 5.
I was just following the agenda.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, you do that and I'll wrap it up.
Okay, so as a practical matter, I'm now running this meeting and asking myself to read the extension of time for 5 Good Friend Drive because Sam is recused. Mary, application of 5 Good Friend Drive site plan for an extension of time. Excuse me, for 1 year or until April 22nd, 2022, in order to obtain a certificate of occupancy. I've read the resolution and move for its adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so carried. Okay, so it's 6-0 and well, that's it, 6-0. Sam's not part of it.
Jody, if you can mark that, I recused on that.
Recused, and 1 recusal.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Kathy, for doing double duty on that one. Finally, Thomas, did we get the resolution on Sebastian?
Yes, I got it.
You have it? Okay. In that case, all yours.
In the matter of the application of John Sebastianski, Artist Studio, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-155-1-8.5, which is the resolution on the Artist Studio approval. I have read this resolution and I move for its approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed and carried, 7-0. All right, listen, thank you all. We don't have a meeting next week and we don't have a meeting on June 2nd. Our next meeting is June 9th. I appreciate everybody's efforts. I'm sorry if I got a little impatient there on the one that went on forever. But you know, whoever had the over under for 9 o'clock, if you had the over, congratulations.
That was me.
Yeah, everybody have a what do you need, Joe?
Nothing.
Oh.
Jody, you didn't
Have a safe
any?
Memorial Day. That's next. We'll
Enjoy,
see
have
you
a
all
great
after
holiday.
Memorial Day, right?
And as soon as we know that we're going to be all live and in person, we can all get along directly with one another. Well, I'll let you know.
Is that coming?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you, Ian. Ian, you made the motion, right?
Second. Yep.
Is there a second?
I seconded it. So did
All those
Ed.
in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Sam. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Thank you, Sam. Thank you,
Bye,
everybody.
no
Thanks,
opposed.
Joanne.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Jody.
Thanks very much.
Night.